Interdisciplinary admission, this is a workflow definition. And when we think about interdisciplinary admission workflows, we think of having the ability to have tools at your fingertips, keeping the medical record up to date to allow you to provide safe, efficient, quality care to your residents in your home. So during our session today, as I mentioned, it will just be a simplified version of the interdisciplinary admission workflow. We're going to apply admission workflows and document through that admission process as it relates to InterRAI LTCF. Okay, so you can see that Jamie is logged into PointClickCare. And so I'll get my annotation going just to guide everyone on the screen as well as Jamie to take the stress out of the workflow. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to head to the clinical menu. And I always say hover to discover. Some people call these tabs. They're really menus because based on your security privileges, you will see a different subset of items in this menu. So we're going to navigate right away to residents. And each column has hyperlinks underneath it and denoted with that blue color. So you can go ahead, Jamie, and click on residents. When I come into residents, you're going to notice the most efficient way is landing you on those residents that are current in your building. Well, in order to move someone into the building, we have to move over to the new tab. So when we think about unit clerks, admission staff, there will be designated people, as I can imagine internally, that prepare the charts. So we think about referrals that are coming across. Your leaders are reviewing those referrals. They are determining eligibility for admission. And once the bed offer goes out and is accepted, there will be designated people that are going to prepare this clinical record for move-in. This is where you will find those residents in preparation for move-in. So the census will be left off until they move in and day of arrival. So this is where we're going to pick up. And some of you may have been participating in the session that we did on registration. And so if you were not a part of that, just know that there are designated people in your home that are going to be preparing these charts. So the day of admission, whether that's a designated admitting nurse or it's the staff on duty that day, I'm going to navigate to the new tab in PointClickCare after my resident arrives. And the very first thing that I need to do so I can move this resident over to current, making it easy for everyone to find, is going to be using the quick ADT link that you will find here to the left of a resident. Now, I have prepared a resident example, so I'll get to use some of the features that are available in PointClickCare. The alphabet bar is giving you access to filter your resident list by a specific letter. And so my resident's last name starts with M, so we'll filter by the letter M. And you'll notice that we're seeing just all of the residents where their last name starts with the letter M. And I'm going to have Jamie leverage the ADT beside Michelle Miller. ADT from this level is going to give me the ability to see quick ADT. I see the resident's name, and then I have to enter an action code. You're going to notice as soon as Jamie clicks on this drop-down menu, it's a very small subset of information. This resident's never been in our building before, and based on that status, you have two options. We're going to choose the actual admit, readmit option. And in doing so, it's going to populate the effective date with today's date and time. We should be doing this in real time. So we should really only have to maybe backdate the time to when that resident actually arrived. So maybe we put it back right to 12 o'clock. I don't expect that you're going to do this the moment they walk through the front door or they come in a wheelchair or whatever means of transport they come by. But we want to backdate the time to reflect when they actually arrived. Estimated payer, primary payer isn't something on the clinical side we need to worry about, and we'll leave it as is. There will be others that will be managing this. Next, you'll notice is the location field. This is grayed out by design, so we will need to click the magnifying glass that will provide us a library of our room listing. And what you'll see is we're looking at available beds for all locations within a single facility as of this date and time. So we're just going to make it really simple on Jamie, and we'll add the location that's right at the top. We'll put her into Cottage 1, room 103, and it's a private room. Where are we receiving this resident from? This to from type is critical, not so much for InterRAI LTCF, but when we circle back to expand our adoption of PointClickCare and rollout, this will be critical in helping your leaders track rehospitalizations and residents at risk for rehospitalization. So things like acute care hospital, where receiving that resident from an acute care hospital is extremely important to that portal. Other things like receiving a resident, they're moving to the facility of choice because they were in a second facility, not of their top choice. Again, selecting the appropriate option here that reflects where that resident is coming from. We're going to choose acute care hospital because we're setting ourselves up for success. And when we look at the information here, you'll notice that the to from location field became available. And these are all of the external facilities listing the hospitals that you have connection with across the organization. These may not all be related to Heron Grove LTC, but they are imported for you to leverage. So we'll pick a hospital from this list. And you'll notice that we've got all of the required fields. So you'll notice that you're seeing little red asterisks to the right of each field. Red asterisks lead the way in PointClickCare and are required fields in order to save this screen successfully. So you can see information in the middle screen. Everything that is required has been populated. And allergies, we're going to look at how to add allergies at the resident level today. So if you are by yourself, and this resident or the information you're pulling the data from to create the chart that you don't have any allergies, this can be selected. Primary physician, this has already been selected, often going to be done by your admissions or unit clerk while they're preparing the chart based on where the location they're moving in. Dependent on the facility, you would automatically potentially know the physician that services that home area in the building. Next steps is clicking save. So once we save this quick ADT, it's not going to refresh automatically. It will require us to refresh the screen. When we refresh the screen, top left corner, you'll notice that Michelle Miller no longer displays under the tab we're viewing because she now has an actual admit census that's been entered on her chart. So if we navigate across to the current tab, you will notice that we're still filtering by the letter M. So if there's anything you learn about this alphabet bar here on the resident list, it's sticky. Once you set it once, in order to return to the entire resident list across all home areas, we do need to go back to the all option, otherwise it will stick. Some other sticky filters that are good to note. Unit, floor, primary physician, any of these filters are set. You can log in and out of the system as many times as you like. Once you set them outside of any, you need to set them back to any in order to pull back your resident list. Great thing for troubleshooting, especially if a staff member comes to you and says, why can't I see Mary Smith? This is the first place I come. I look at the alphabet bar for filtering and I look at these filters here immediately. So it will just help to reduce that anxiety and that stress initially. All right, Michelle Miller is now active here. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and edit into her record. And so this edit link is the exact same screen that your admissions or unit clerks would see when creating this resident shell. Couple of things that we want to take a look at here. Things that will populate into your InterRAI LTCF we want to make sure are here. Technically, most likely it's going to be, but we just want to make sure that the birth date has been populated. Their marital status has been populated. Their occupation has been populated, and I skipped over one as in sex. This will also populate into your InterRAI LTCF. There are many other fields here that we're going to get into a deeper dive when we circle back to implement at a broader scale. But those are the key determinants, as well as if you scroll down to the very bottom of this screen, Jamie, there is one last field, and that is your province zip code. this is going to populate into InterRAI LTCF as you would be experiencing that in MDS. So this is the permanent address or postal code that they would have resided at. So if they're coming from hospital, that wasn't their permanent residence. What was their postal code prior to that? It could have been in another long-term care facility. It could have been in a retirement community. It could have been a private home. Okay. All right, we're going to go ahead and click save, and that will take us back to our resident list because I wasn't at the resident level. Next, we'll click on the resident's name, and that is going to take me into Michelle Miller's chart. Just a quick point out, the number that you're seeing to the right of the resident's name, this would mimic what you were entering into MDS A6A. So this is key information because this resident ID is actually going to pull into A5C into your InterRAI LTCF. So it must match what was in your prior software system. So it's never hurts to double check. Your leadership team has been doing a lot of work to get data imported. So always double checking this just to make sure we've got accurate information so you prevent any rejections for your InterRAI. Doesn't hurt, okay? The information in quotations was found in the demographics. This is preferred names. So if you have residents that might have full names of Margaret, but they go by Peggy, or in this case, Michelle is Shelley, putting their preferred name will actually put that in quotations for you so you can see that easily. The next area that we want to take a look at is actually going to be found under the 3 ellipses or dots that are vertical on the right-hand side of the header of the chart. Next is going to be edit photo. So I know that many of you have photos that are been taken by digital cameras. The files would have been uploaded onto a computer. This is one way in which you can import a resident photo into PointClickCare. So number one, we can click import. And it's going to ask me to choose the file from my computer. And it will actually take you to your files on your computer, and you would be able to pick the file in the location. Obviously, you'd have to find it. The photo date, so the upload date is here, and it's 6/2. You can adjust it to whenever the date was for the photo that was taken, and then you would choose to import. We also have an app. It might be a little bit delayed in being available to you, but it's called ChartPic. Once the resident is current in the database, you can log in with your credentials, just as the same way you get into PointClickCare, so your SSO credentials, and then you'll be able to leverage a resident list. You'll select the resident's name. It'll ask you to take a photo. There's no storage of that photo on that device. It's asking you to take a photo with the device. You can choose to place it. Obviously, you can crop it. You can move the photo around and be able to save it. It will upload it into PointClickCare. And as we get expanding the use of PointClickCare, it goes to POC and to EMR applications as well, all without resizing. None of that is required for you. So for the time being, you may be using that import that I showed you through the 3 dots. And when ChartPic as an app becomes available to you, you can start leveraging that to reduce the time to get your photos uploaded. Next is going to be your care profile. Care profile, there are key areas in here. Number one, special instructions. Going to call this out whether we're expanded or not. Special instructions are where we usually add crush med information. It'll be high-risk alerts, things that need to be easily available go forward for the interdisciplinary team because it will show in the header. So Jamie, if you want to put high risk for falls with injury, just as an example, this will allow us to see that in the header when we're done. But the things that are going to push to InterRAI LTCF for us are things like hearing aids. So we're going to check that off. And as soon as you select that they have hearing aids, it'll ask you to fill in whether it's left or right, or checking both boxes if they have one for each ear. Next that will populate InterRAI is going to be glasses. And last but not least, you will see dental appliance here. And as soon as I select dental appliance, you can see one is for upper, one is for lower. I then will have to select it and indicate whether it's partial or full. Okay. There are lots of other areas here that you can fill in to support your needs in the home. However, those are the key ones that will support InterRAI documentation. Why do I bring you here? Why do I want you to fill it in? Because in the event we do not check boxes here in the care profile, InterRAI will populate a response that may not be accurate for your resident. So it will populate the response in InterRAI as no. And the resident may wear glasses and they may have hearing aids or they may have dentures. So that means RAI team members, nursing has to be double checking, triple checking to make sure that those responses are actually accurate. And this could save us time in the event if we're filling it out consistently where we have residents that have these auxiliary devices. So we can go ahead and click save. All right, so next area that we want to take a look at is going to be the profile tab. Profile tab, this is going to be filled out by your admissions clerk, unit clerk, the person building the chart for you in preparation for go live. But it doesn't hurt to know where things are stored so that we can ensure that if the family happens to provide us information on day of move-in, we can verify if it's already in the system or needs to be added. So you're going to notice the first thing is contacts. Contacts, we need to have at least one contact that has a contact type of emergency contact. And you can see those contact types over here. Why do I call this out? Because for clinical team members, the emergency contact type actually drives that contact to show on a transfer discharge report. If I'm transferring that resident to hospital, I want to print that report and send it with the resident, and it drives that contact to show up. This means that the hospital has a contact to reach out to for any decision making if the resident's not capable of doing that. Outside of that, no contacts will display on that report. We also want to make sure that the telephone numbers are correct. If they have an email, that we have that email address. This is visibility and insight for you as a team member so that you're not digging for this data. It's becoming very transparent. You'll know that notice that I set up this contact to have some information in that is supporting the clinical teams. If you hover the I, it will give you information that I added to the comments. And it basically says, call the office phone from 8 to 4, Monday to Friday, and the cell number at all other times. Well, the admissions person might know that, they might not. So how do we get that added so I can have quick insight into that on the outside? Well, I can edit. And that comments box is at the very, very bottom where Jamie was headed initially. So I added this information. It's another great place to put vacation alerts, and you have an alternative contact while that particular contact is on vacation. Very supportive for the clinical teams that are managing appointments, having to notify families related to changing condition. I want to be efficient. I want things easy to find, and this will support you in that journey. Okay. This is where also the contact types are being built, which was inside. And it's okay, Jamie, you don't have to go back in. But we just want to make sure that at least one contact is identified there. And that's how we update it. Medical professionals often going to be populated initially. You can see here I've added 2 on purpose. Number 1, we have our primary physician in Derek Adam. He is bolded, and you can see the office telephone numbers have been added in the profiles. Your leadership team has done a great job at getting these profiles built out based on information they could find. This supports me when I'm having to reschedule or schedule appointments on that resident's behalf or reach out to our primary physician, in-house physicians. The other medical professional is also a physician, but thinking about going forward, cardiologists, oncologists, gastroenterologists, and psychogeriatricians, all of those specialists that are coordinating in care for our residents. These can be built into the system. You will need to let your leadership know so that they can work with you to get this added. Not an urgent or emergent issue at this moment, but know that you can have all of those medical professionals listed here, making your life a little bit easier when you have to call these individuals maybe to schedule or reschedule an appointment. To update your medical professionals, you can click modify. So a couple of things. You can see that Derek Adam is indicated as primary. When I check this box, it automatically chooses to include that medical professional. Whereas Elizabeth Allen, I've chose to include her. I can only have one primary. So if I chose to update her to primary, it's going to deselect Derek Adam as the primary existing. I can select to include as many medical professionals as coordinating in the resident's care. Okay. So you may have this already. It's really going to be a verification. Is this accurate? Then once you click save, it's going to ask you to verify that you're choosing Elizabeth Allen as the primary physician now. And so you can see that she is now bolded black. Okay. Custom information. This is nice to have. If we click on the edit all, this is like taking the Trans-Canada Highway instead of the back roads or the two-lane highways. So edit all gets you all user-defined fields that I can track and update automatically all at once. I'm not saying there are any required. You can see there are no red asterisks in here. So you can see I added hairdressing notes, wash and set weekly. I gave the spouse's name, when their next podiatry appointment is, etc. Well, we're going to indicate prepaid funeral arrangements and as yes, and we'll click save. So again, we're not having to update everything. We fill in what we know and leave the rest for later. This actually gets pulled into a resident list report to give you transparency into the information not recorded elsewhere in the system. Well, we did indicate prepaid funeral arrangements. So external facilities, this is where we get into our funeral homes that are listed like our hospitals in external facilities that you pulled into census. First off, I'm seeing hot listed items. I'm going to filter this list because I know this list is massive to the external facility type. And so by clicking on the drop down for external facility type, I'm going to choose funeral home here in the list. And I will only see those external facilities, which your team has done a great job at getting them in. And so, Jamie, I can choose the search option if I'm not seeing, and it's a big list still. I can choose a funeral home in the area in which we reside or based on the family's communication or residents' communication, and then you can click search to find it. I'm just going to have you select one from the list for the time being, and we'll click save. Why do we have that information? I can't tell you how many times I use this when I was in the facility. Unexpected death happens, or even when it is expected, it gives me the ability as a nurse to work quietly in the background, allowing my families to grieve, and I can do the work that I need to do to support that family. I know exactly, yes, they have prepaid arrangements, and yes, here is the funeral home that I'm going to be calling to have them come and pick up that loved one. Okay, so really, really helpful there to have that information to support you. Next is allergies. Allergies, this information, you'll notice here, there is a little checkbox. Jamie, if you want to go ahead and select no known allergies, you're going to notice that updates the allergies from to be determined, which we don't want it to stay that way, to no known allergies. Well, if that family comes in and they say, oh no, mom has an allergy to penicillin, she's got allergies to peanuts, and she has an EpiPen, awesome. Well, I don't have to uncheck no known allergies. All I need to do is click new. You have two options in the status drop down. You have active and prior history. We're going to leave ours to active. The date field, it will populate with current date, which also coincides with our admission date. This doesn't mean this is the date they were diagnosed with this allergy. It just means it's the first time we became aware or we're entering the allergy into the system. You also have the option to choose unknown. You'll notice there are several red asterisks in here. So when we save this window, we have to have those fields filled in. The category, I'm going to encourage you wherever possible to leverage drug. And that's because allergy checking, when enabled for orders in EMAR, will do an allergy check on the back end to know whether or not the medication you're about to add to the system actually has a product in it that this resident may be allergic to. All other categories will not do that allergy checking. So where possible, drug is the preferred choice. And the option here, leaving it to Medispan, that's not PointClickCare's medication library, it's the library that's loaded into your system. So Jamie, we're going to choose penicillin. As you do start typing, it does use predictive texting. The more you type, the smaller the list. And so we want penicillin's allergen class down here at the bottom. And as soon as I do that, we must pick from the list. You can't free text the information in, it will not save for you. So if you type really quickly and it doesn't pick it up, back out and click away from the field and then click into the field and start typing again. We're going to say this is a true allergy, but you do have intolerance and propensity to adverse reactions. Severity, we're going to say this is a moderate severity. Reaction manifestation, we're going to say diarrhea. And as Jamie types, you'll notice it's using that same, it's 2 R's, I believe. And I have the same challenge, DIARR. There you go. And there's lots of diarrhea options. We're just going to choose the top one, just diarrhea, simple, straightforward. Okay. And we're going to go to the bottom and we're going to click Save and New because we're going to enter one more. And as you save and new, it actually saves that penicillin allergy and it's going to take us in to the resident. You'll see it saving in the back end. The next one is going to be also, let's choose food this time. And just so you can see the message you're going to get. Allergen is going to be peanut. Yeah, keep typing. Yeah. So you can see there's lots of different peanut options there. There's peanut flour, extracts, oil. We're just choosing peanuts in general. And the allergy type is going to be a true allergy in this case. The severity is severe. And it's prior anaphylaxis. So if you just type anaphylaxis, it should bring up what you're looking for. Yeah, you can put anaphylactic reaction. It does have anaphylaxis in there. That's fine for today. Yep. And we're just going to say, I couldn't find things. These exist in that reaction manifestation library, but face swelling. And at this point, we're going to go ahead and click Save. And we'll click OK. This is the message that I was mentioning where allergy checks can't be performed based on the category we chose of food. That will be the case for environmental. All of those will give you that allergy checking. It's just letting you know that even if we entered a medication that had peanuts, peanut containing products, we would not get that allergy checking information. A couple of things here. You'll notice that penicillins that Jamie just added, we have a little information icon. Again, hover to discover, and you'll see the reaction note she entered. So I never have to drill in tight. I can see it from the outside. I also can see the type, the category, the reaction manifestation, severity, and date. And the history link. So we have two penicillins here. And so a couple of things is we can go ahead and click strike out. So whoever else is in here with us at the same time, if you would please not strike out another one, it would be helpful because that we have one left. So you'll notice here that strikeout is at the bottom and I have to choose a reason as to why, and it will be duplicate entry. And we're going to go ahead and click strikeout. So the strikeout feature will allow me to strike out that item. It does not display on the active list by default, but there are display filters. You're going to see these across many of the tabs within the clinical chart or record. And if you expand those display filters in the top left there, there's a little plus sign. You'll notice that I can choose to show resolved allergies, struck out allergies, and or those that were categorized as a prior history. And so now when Jamie clicks search, that struck out allergen will be here. So the biggest thing to know is there are no secrets in PointClickCare, and I usually will say it has the best marriage, simply because if you click save on something, you're taking the credit for that work that you're doing. And so I can run audit reports on all of that information. Those are available in the top right. You also have history hyperlinks that are available here. So I'm just going to repeat what I just mentioned. If there are multiple users on the call today that are following along, I just ask that you choose a different resident than the one Jamie is working in. We haven't run into errors yet, but we will when we get to InterRAI LTCF. And so we're kind of tripping over one another where we're going to potentially run a risk. Okay, so if you can pick a different resident, that would be very much appreciated. Any questions with allergy entry? It does update your allergens in the header by default to show peanuts and dust, and it's in red. All right, we can collapse the display filters here. Next area that we want to take a look at is medical diagnosis. Medical diagnosis will be populating into InterRAI LTCF, and this will give me the ability to support my documentation and coding InterRAI. So clicking New Diagnosis, entry window here, often you're going to remember the description before the code, and please don't shoot the messenger. This is an ICD-10 World Health Organization library. This is not a PointClickCare library. It is very technical in nature. And so when you're searching for information, I encourage you to do less is more. One word, half a word if you can't find what you're looking for. And I'm going to teach you a little trick that I have learned over the years to be able to help myself find the codes I'm looking for when it just seems like everything I'm trying is not working. Okay. So Jamie, if you can do me one little favor, if we can close out of here for a second. So what Jamie did was click on the magnifying glass beside this field, and that takes me to that diagnosis library. But what I will say is if you type a description here, so for example, constipation. And as soon as Jamie enters the information here, she can either click outside the box in a white space or click the magnifying glass. Both will do the same. You'll notice it kind of just clicked and refreshed automatically. Well, that's simply because this is on what we call a hot list of diagnosis. So it's on a shorter list than the all diagnosis view. And there's only one of them. So it automatically populated. And if you were thinking, I know there's more to this than meets the eye, and this is not what I really wanted, I'm going to show you how you can refresh when that scenario happens. We're going to leave this for the time being. Admission date, that's today. You can choose to leave it as current date or select admission date, which will pull in from the census effective date. Just know this is not the date they were diagnosed with this. It's the first time the facility became aware or when we're entering it into the system. So it doesn't tie back to the actual diagnosed date. Rank and classification. These are optional in Canada, but it will be a determination from the organizational level. So more communication from your leadership team to come. By ranking a diagnosis as primary, you are going to push that diagnosis to the header. You can choose to record as many as primary as the resident has diagnosis. There is going to be no restriction. This will pull it into the header, giving people easy access to that information. At a minimum, we look to encourage you to have at least the reason for admission as primary, if not all diagnosis. So you're going to see in a minute the benefit to ranking as primary. So rank we'll say as primary. Classification will be they had it on admission. But you can see those short-term diagnoses might have a classification of during stay. So things like UTIs, pneumonia, all of these things, a lot of homes will tell me, oh, I don't really add those. Those become beneficial though and get resolved when they're cleared because you need those to code your InterRAI assessments. So it's really giving you data transparency and that visibility into what's active at that moment in time within the look back of your InterRAI assessment. Comments works like we've seen on allergies and diagnosis. We're going to leave this one blank for the time being, and we're going to click Save and New. So Save and New, it just keeps me in the entry window, allows me to be efficient. Here's what I'm going to say. You'll notice that it didn't save Jamie's diagnosis here that she entered. It's holding it in a queue in the back end. The biggest thing with this, and I learned by once bitten, twice shy, if I get called away and my system times out, it's going to remove, or if I click cancel at the bottom, it's going to remove all the diagnosis I've put in the queue so far, and I will be starting from scratch. So I always just say, save the last one. And if you got to go for an emergency, don't just leave it sitting up here because there are session timeouts and chances are it will time out by the time you get back. Okay, we're going to go ahead and this time I'm going to have you type HTN in for hypertension in here. Some codes in this library do have acronyms added to the full descriptions. These can be expanded upon by your leadership team if you provide them your feedback where you're finding a diagnosis that doesn't have that acronym. It automatically gave you benign hypertension, but maybe this is not, I-10 is not the one I wanted. So Jamie, if you want to go ahead and click on the magnifying glass. By default, it's giving me that diagnosis hot list. As I mentioned, that is going to be the shortened list of all the World Health Organization codes in the system. And so if I go and I enter a description now, it's going to do exactly what it just did a moment ago. So Jamie, we're going to change the view to all diagnosis. This is giving me everything. I will have to remove the acronym from the code field and enter it into the description field because it's looking for that number in the description field. Yeah, HTN and search. So what this is doing is it's showing me all of the diagnosis codes that actually have HTN and the letter sequence of the name. It doesn't have to be an acronym, though this one here at the top does. But you see lightning, HTN is a letter sequence within that diagnosis. And you can see there are other codes. Well, there is only one HTN. Well, maybe if I change this HTN acronym to hypertension, I'll now see a different subset of information. And so you're going to start to see, wow, we show 15 diagnoses per page, and there's a next button above and below this list. So now you're getting into a lot of codes. So now you can see why we try and build, it's not perfect by any means, but that hot list to really reduce your search time in finding what you're looking for. So you can see there's lots of information here. I can't imagine that anyone would be neonatal hypertension in the geriatric population, but this is where we're getting into seeing everything that's in the World Health Organization library that is used internationally. Okay, so Jamie, I think we'll find on the next page is going to be, and we probably have to scroll down, so you'll notice there's little scroll bars, and we keep going. There's a lot of hypertension codes in here. So this is why I said less is more, and if I can give my leadership team some universal acronyms that are nationally, internationally accepted, then we can add them in, and that will make your search much easier. So if you, you can see there's lots of hypertension. It was I think you're going to have to go back a page. It's I-10. Yep, there you go, right at the top there. And so we're going to say that this is secondary instead of primary. And classification is on admission. Recent hospital stay, June 1st through the 2nd. Okay, 2026. And we're going to go ahead this time and just click save. You'll notice it will save both the diagnosis Jamie was working on. The paper icons, hover to discover, it will show me what I put in those comments. There is no requirement to add comments in there. It's just if there is information that will be good for your interdisciplinary team to be aware of related to that diagnosis, share it with your team members and so that they can see. Now, you'll notice that there are 3 ways in which I can filter or show the resident header information at the top. The standard view does not give me diagnosis by default, but if you chose the expanded view, you'll notice that the diagnosis that's ranked as primary is going to be in the header. So if I come along and I realize, oh, my coworker, my teammate forgot to add these diagnoses, well, I don't have to update one at a time. With proper security, I can click rank diagnosis. I will see all of my active diagnoses and can change the ranks and classifications here. So as soon as I update to primary and I click save and close, I can now see both of those in the resident header. So data transparency, visibility goes to POC and EMAR, thinking the expanded version of implementation. You enter it once, it's all here, go forward. Okay. Now, if you click compact up at the top here, Just to give you an idea of the three different views you have available, compact is really compact. If I want to see things like allergies or code status, I can click on these buttons that are different colors and it will start to expand the information for me. Okay, so depending on where I click, it's going to give me, it's going to automatically expand it here to the standard view. Any questions for regarding diagnosis entry? All righty. Well, we're going to move on then. And the next area is weights and vitals. And if we navigate to the weights and vitals tab of the chart, so it's truncated weights and vitals, we want to first go to the new button. So for any new admissions after go live, we're going to want to be entering weights and vitals into PointClickCare versus your other system. The reason being is this populates into InterRAI LTCF. The goal here would be entering 6 months of history, specifically at a minimum for weights. That's because we generate exceptions for weights up to 6 months in the past. And we don't want anybody investigating a weight exception of a gain or loss of 7, 10, 5, 7.5, or 10% because it was a missing weight. And the system is looking at a missing value between months that generated this exception. Vitals can be go forward thing, the remainder of your vitals, but just knowing weights as time permits. I don't think you will have time before June 15th to do all of that, but we want to be doing maybe getting June vitals at least into the system so that we can populate our InterRAI go forward. So weight, Jamie, I probably don't have to tell you what values to enter here. You can just pick random values. These are all metric, so kilograms, Celsius, centimeters. There is no way for us to say I want pounds for weight and Celsius for temperature. It's an all or nothing feature. Okay, so yep. And then it will look to require your position, temperature. Yep. You have your forehead non-contact. Not sure if you're using that still. Pulse. Yep. And you have your pulse types of regular, irregular, unable to determine, etc. Your respirations, blood sugar levels, oxygen, and the method. Flow rate, inhaled concentration, wouldn't be necessary if it's room air. Height, let's just say she's just a little lady. Yeah, you got it. And she's even shorter than me. Good things come in small packages, they say. Yep, standing, that's fine. Pain level, we have 2 scales when you're entering those values. Numeric, if the resident can tell you their pain level, and the scale for cognitively impaired will give you a table. It's important to know that each horizontal line, either in column 0, 1, or 2, has to have a response in order for it to tally a score and us to click OK at the bottom. And it will then record that and we'll go ahead and click save. So this is recording it with an effective date of today, current time. So going forward, we definitely want to be entering these vitals. And you're going to see on Thursday, for those that joined me for InterRAI, how if a weight entered in the last 30 days is in the weights and vitals tab, it'll pull into your InterRAI LTCF. So at this point, entering vitals into PointClickCare with 6 months of weight history will be very helpful. Well, go forward before point of care is an option to you in an expanded version. How will I go ahead and leverage the tools in PointClickCare to take the monthly values that you would be required to complete and get them into the system? First off, we can go to the clinical menu, and you'll notice under the quick entry column, every weight and vital is listed here as an option. So if Jamie, you click on weight, we'll use that as our example. The process and workflow is the same for each vital, obviously just different content. Data entry period. This is where I'd come to enter my weight history. And so the month is June currently, 2026. Unit is the entire building. This is where staff can filter by their home area and or floor and focus on the cottage that they are responsible for documentation. Sorting by location or by resident name. I leave it by name, it's alphabetical. The data entry section is basically saying, I'm going to record these values that you're entering for June with an effective date of June 2nd at 12:51 for the following scale. The scale is required. So if you don't have that information from your old software where you might be entering this, please select a common scale. The system will require it and go ahead and enter the values. Keep in mind, you already have 2 residents here that have values entered for June. So I'd only be filling in those items for those residents that didn't already have values. What I really like about this page, and for the foreseeable future until point of care is an option and we can be doing this electronically or you do it through EMAR, printable views here are very helpful. And so if you click, we've set the month that we're recording values for and the year, we would set our home area and click on printable view. This is going to give you a piece of paper that you can print out either to give to your healthcare aide or to use for yourself. If I was doing vitals, I would print out each sheet for every respective vital we're requiring to document, put it on a clipboard, and I'm going to take my machine and I'm going to go to my residence and capture as many as I can. I used to do that on a Saturday, usually when I was my month to do them, and I was working the first weekend in the month. It allows me to just enter the value here. I could circle or highlight the last scale used if it was the scale I'm going to use this time, but also it gives me the prior 2 months of value. So as you move forward, it's going to show you what the last 2 months of entries were. And if I'm about to write something down on that paper that is significantly different, the first thought in my brain is look at the equipment. Is it charged? Was it at 0? And if any of that doesn't equate, then I'm going to retake the value. I'm going to charge the battery. I'm going to maybe make sure it's at 0. If that was the scenario, I'm going to reweigh, or I'm going to redo that blood pressure, etc. Super helpful before I start writing things down that I'm going to have to redo anyway, because I'm going to generate exceptions in PointClickCare. Okay, so just a way to leverage the tools here to get it printed out. And then once the printed form is complete, I sit down at the computer and I just have to do a data entry exercise. So if you want to put 68 in Big Bird's chart, and we have lots of Big Birds here. Clearly, they have different middle initials. And we'll skip that Big Bird because that Big Bird has something in there. So just kind of an idea of how you're going through, and it will be recorded with an effective date June 2nd at 12:51 using the wheelchair scale. This all gets pushed back to the resident level. Okay, so Jamie, if you want to go ahead and click, once you're finished selecting an option and click Save. Now, all of these Big Bird results that you recorded will show up on the screen as being recorded, and they're all on the Weights and Vitals tab for that particular resident back on their chart. I would start to leverage the other vitals. Again, there's no requirement for all vitals to be entered 6 months of history. It's really just the weights, simply because we don't want you investigating a weight change that is really just because there's missing data. Okay. Any questions on number one, how I can do it from resident by resident, or how I can get to the clinical menu and do it through a quick entry feature?
Jan, I don't have a question, but I did just want to mention to the staff, healthcare aides will not be using the PCC initially. So these weights that normally our healthcare aides would enter into CareOrg, we're going to need you guys to put them into PCC just for the temporary time until we roll out the full PCC. So that print option might be a good way for you guys to manage that on the floor. If you have your HCAs still gathering the weights, they can put it into Care Organizer, but you can put it into PCC.
Awesome. Thank you. So going back into Michelle's chart, the height also populates into your InterRAI. So at a minimum in PCC, I would encourage you while you're rolling forward with this, maybe doing your vitals here, so you've got that history rolling forward by the time we get to full rollout, especially weights. Height, we require once a year in order to maintain a BMI. And so that's a body mass index on your view all tabs in your weights and vitals. But also, it will give you the ability to see that through the front end of the system. Height does pull into InterRAI. So as long as it's been entered within the year, it will pull in. You'll notice also there is something called baselines here. Baselines, these are what is considered normal values. So as you're moving forward, maybe you take out a care org, a particular month that you want to enter baselines for. And so baselines are really used as a comparison. And when staff are entering vitals into the system, it really says, here's an example of what's considered normal for that resident. And if we're about to enter values under the new button that are significantly different, again, before I have to go and do a whole lot of assessing to determine why these vitals are out of range, I can review my equipment and do a recalculation or redo of that vital before I actually enter it into the system and generate a whole lot of extra work for myself. That may have just been because an equipment, or it could have been a user, the way we saw or heard something, depending on the equipment we're using. So baselines, what we encourage for existing residents would be taking a month of that 6 months of history. And as long as your residents are not sick within that month, you can enter them as baselines. It gets you something to start from. They can be changed as often as you need to with residents' decline in status. When their vitals are changing, we need to, these are dynamic, they're meant to be changed. You can set a regular cadence at a minimum as to when they will be reviewed. So I'm thinking with your InterRAI cycle, doing it at least quarterly, eyeballing the vital, the baselines, determining, is this still reasonable for this resident? If not, adjusting them where required. So if you want to go ahead and just redo, Jamie, what you put in the new values, I will begin to explain when we would do this for a new admission and the recommendation. So in the facility that I worked in, we did vitals every shift for the first 72 hours. Yours may be some part of that duration. It might be just on admission. So we used to do our baselines after 72 hours, the person doing the last set of vitals after 72 hours. So the residents had time to settle in, their vitals returned to more of a stable state. This is a reality of what their vitals would be, because day of admission, first shift, anxiety is running high. It's a big move for our residents, and it's really not going to be an accurate reflection. So that's just an example of how it can be leveraged go forward for brand new admission. So first 3 days, you're just doing it under new every shift. And then the person doing the last set of vitals would also enter it under baselines. Another set of fields in here are thresholds. Now, thresholds are going to be very helpful to manage individualized residents where, for example, they struggle with high blood pressure, they have hypertension, they're on antihypertensive medications. But PointClickCare will generate exceptions in the event the systolic exceeds 139, the diastolic exceeds 89. So if I don't want to see those exceptions, because our physician, when we call, is going to say, I don't need to know about that, that's fine. I have nurses saying, oh, that's normal for the resident, clearing alerts. We don't want to get in the habit of clearing exceptions. We want to make sure we put the thresholds in to prevent the exceptions from the system generating. So if this person is an example of that, maybe the doctor says for this resident, I don't need to be notified until their blood pressure exceeds 150 systolic and 95 dystolic. I don't need a low value for this resident. They don't struggle with low blood pressure. So I can enter just the high. What happens now is, instead of the system generating exception when they exceed 139, or 89, it now will not generate an exception for this resident alone until they exceed 150 or 95. So I've really personalized it. It's streamlining for the nursing team to say, when I see these exceptions, I know I've got to extra work. I know I've got to retake those vitals. I'm going to call the physician, whatever the case may be based on policy, to do further assessment as to why this resident is got their blood pressure up this high. Because we all know that little old lady that normally is 110 over, 75 and is up at 139, something isn't right there. So we're doing our regular follow-up. We're doing this as nurses already. This just means that we have a valid alert or exception generating, and we know we've got to action it instead of getting alert fatigue, where the doctor is just going to say, I don't need to know about that because it's generating off the system. Okay. Blood sugars, another one that you're going to want. So system exceptions, low is 3.9, high is 5.5. If I have a diabetic, on a good day for a healthy adult over the age of 16, we don't achieve those metrics that are identified as normal. Okay. So I want to get a blood sugar range that's acceptable with the physician. This may come over time as you're identifying those people, as you're doing weights and vital entry that are generating exceptions. It's going to help you identify, who do I want to get on my physician's radar and ask him, listen, I need a maximum systolic blood pressure before I have to call you for this particular resident, or I need a blood sugar range that's acceptable before I need to reach out to you, especially if they're not on sliding scale insulin where it's telling you that information. Same with oxygen saturation. Our low is 90%. If you have somebody who's a CO2 retainer, COPD, they're on oxygen, and that's asking a lot. That's a really good day for them. What's the lowest oxygen saturation that resident can have then before I need to call that physician? This is just reducing the alert actioning that a nurse is going to have or to be doing out of entering values that are going to generate these exceptions. Okay. So if there is options for all of them, but those are the really common ones. Another one, temperature. Some of my homes have been asking their medical director to give them a blanket that they're now adding to their admission package for med directives, standing orders, things like that, saying, I don't need to be notified until it goes below 35.8. Our low is 36.6. So we're going to want that because otherwise you're going to get these exceptions generating all the time. So some of those things are going to come with time, but really the more we can do to be proactive with that is going to support all of us not having to do more actioning and more documentation in the system than absolutely necessary. So I had Jamie enter values which she entered values automatically that were different. These are the exceptions I'm talking about. The system looks at every value entered, and if it exceeds 5%, 7.5%, or 10%, it's going to generate. It doesn't take 6 months for you to generate that exception. This now requires my extra attention and documentation, because in the alert spell, and we're going to get to this with expanded values, this is what's going to start generating entry over entry in an alert spell in real time to say, hey, we've got work to do because of our documentation supporting that extra actions. Okay. Also, you've got your vitals now in the header of the chart. The very last vitals that were entered and the effective date. If it's out of range, it will be red and it has a little triangle to the right of it. It will not go back to black until we enter a value within normal limits. Also, just as an FYI, if someone's thinking, well, where do I understand when the exceptions will start to generate? This is available for everybody. Evidence-based vital ranges. It gives you every vital, what the highs and lows are, if applicable, and the documentation source that information was pulled from. So it's not a PCC brainchild. It is coming from evidence-based documents that are here. And it gets into the weight exceptions below and how the system does its calculation to give you those exceptions. So dietitians especially are wanting to see this information, medical professionals as well, as you're starting to ask for those thresholds. What's the highs or the lows or both for a particular resident, so I know when to call you and when further assessment is needed. Okay.
May I ask a question?
Absolutely,
May I ask
Donna.
a question? So what I'm not long-term care, I am SL4, but I'm looking at the weight. What I think would be really useful for like direct action plan and the initiation of it, is there is that where we would put the baseline and then the high and the low?
Yes. So baseline weight would be right off their admission, and it can be changed as necessary, Donna. But then the high and low thresholds, oftentimes. So Jamie, if you want to click out of here, I think what you're talking about is more about not just the thresholds. That would be telling me that I need to do referrals or contacting the dietitian urgently. But if you click edit baselines for me for 1 second, when provided by the dietitian, you can put a goal weight range in here. This is not going to stop exceptions from generating, but this is going to give you insight into what the dietitian feels should be an acceptable weight range, high and low, for that particular resident. So that will guide you as well. I often just say to nurses, this is something your dietitian would have to provide. Maybe you're doing the data entry. If they're not, I encourage dietitians to learn that. But also they're going to document progress notes or fill out their assessments accordingly as well once we get to that point. Keep in mind, the weight and the height is the most important for the time being because that's InterRAI focused. But you've got a great point. You're welcome. All right, you can go ahead and click save, Jamie. Outside of exceptions and baselines, any questions on how to do entry from the resident level or to go to that clinical menu and to do entry for the specific weights in the interim for InterRAI through quick entry and save yourself a lot of time? In the interim, because you are entering this information, when you click view all beside any vital, and I'll have you do it for weights for the purpose of today's session, there is a weight history here. So this is all values entered in the last 90 days. If I uncheck that, it's going to give me everything. You can get to your other vitals from here by just clicking the hyperlinks. But I think what's key is if you have a physician who wants to or learns by picture, you can graph those values. And so by pulling a graph of these values, you can start to see everything's by bar graph. You just adjust the date range for the information that they've asked. I used to take the opportunity to teach when my physician was asking me to print this, print that, do this, do that. And I'd say, oh, I'd love to, but I'd really like to teach you how to do this. It's a great opportunity. You've got a new system to really bring them on board and show them how to use the system if they're getting into the database. Reducing the dependency on us. They're pretty dependent on all of us. Okay. All right. We can go ahead and click the back button out of here. Any final questions before we leave the space here?
Sorry, it's Donna again. And I don't know the system well enough to have this answer. So you're saying a physician can access this, so obviously you give them the username and password, blah, blah, blah. Do they have to be at the site to access it, or can they be in their office to access it?
So that will be a determination if the physicians are given access, Donna, to the system. That will be a leadership decision if they're not currently accessing today. It will be a decision as to whether we give them access to the system and whether or not they would have access outside of the facility walls. So it can, but it will be an organizational decision. More to come on that from your leadership. And I think as we grow and utilize more of PointClickCare for the interim with RAI, it may not be that they're going to get into the system, but that may be something for consideration in the future once we get beyond just InterRAI LTC. Make sense?
Yeah, thanks.
Oh, you're very welcome. Great questions. Any others?
Because we're at a break, Jan, I'm just going to jump in for a second. For those of you folks on the call who are multiple people in a room, can I get you to put the names of the people that are in the room in the chat, in the meeting chat, please? So I remember Delta View has more than one person, and I think Christensen Village has more than one person. Can you just put the names in the chat, please? Thank you, Jan.
Oh, you're very welcome. All right, Jamie, I'm going to take the screen for just a second. I want to show you how ChartPic works. I'm not saying that you're going to have access to ChartPic this go around, but it may be beneficial in the future just so you can see how you can utilize the system. So it'll take me just a minute. I'm going to use a phone so that you'll see it on an iPhone. You may be using an iPad or anything that has iOS or Android that has a camera on it. Obviously, that's a requirement, but this will give me the ability to show you the functionality, and maybe that will bring some questions and allow people to also get that information Dave asked for in the chat.
So sorry, Jan, it's Dave again. It says chat is disabled.
Oh, 1 second, I can fix that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Whoops. Well, maybe I will and maybe I won't. There you go. It should be good now. And I see some information in the chat that I'll address in just a few minutes. That would make sense why everyone is sending me private messages. All right, you should be seeing my lock screen now, correct? All right, so ChartPic is the lovely, see, it's pine green is what they call it here. And it says it's got a photo frame with a silhouette inside. So when you click on ChartPic, you're going to use, well, I'll say not now, but you'll notice that here on the main screen, because I've logged into other databases, my username is saved. This would be your SSO credentials go forward once you are live with SSO. For now, it would be if you were logging in through that nurse user that we're using in the generic sandbox, you would just use the same login credentials you have for that nurse user. So because you don't see the username for your account there, I have to come to the main page. I said use a different account, and it's probably blocking with a whole bunch of photos. So I'm going to enter GS train, and I'll use my login. Okay, and so then I'll click login. It's going to give me the main login screen. And this single sign-on, this sign-on piece, it doesn't work for this app. It's a generic thing that keeps coming up. But gstrain.pcc-wallet.j is my username, and then I'll enter my password. And as long as I didn't hit incorrect keys with my big fingers, it will give me what I'm looking for. Immediately, this is not tied to the user alternate PIN for those on the leadership team that are almost having a heart attack. It has nothing to do with that. It is tied to the app itself, is tied to the user, and is there for when we have inactivity. It's allowing you to, after 5 minutes of inactivity, and you need to get back in, it'll allow you to get back in using your PIN. If you forget your PIN, guess what? You'll be just entering that password. So it will ask you for that PIN. Again, it's tied to the user, not tied to your PointClickCare security credentials, has nothing to do with it. So the reason we would wait till after the resident has moved in order to do this is because they have to be active in my building. So you'll notice it's a very straightforward, simple screen. I'm sorting by resident name here. That's the option on the right-hand side. I can click on to sort by location. I can sort and filter by no profile photo, and none of our residents here have profile photos at the moment. I can search when it's by name, my sort options by name. I can search for Michelle Miller. And as soon as I click on her name, I have skin and wound. This is phase 2, so don't get too excited yet. But this app is going to be used for skin and wound when we get to that stage. Your use for this right now is to take a photo. It gives you the photo space. I'm going to click take a photo, and I have a little friend here that I'll take a photo of. I can zoom in 0.5, 1 times, and 2 times zoom. So if I go 2 times zoom, I'm just going to do his head. I can now I can use this photo and I can now move it around. So I'm just cropping the image, getting it where I want it. When I'm happy, I can click done. This photo is now uploaded into PointClickCare and all of the entities that are connected. So things like POC and EMAR. No resizing, no digital cameras, no SD cards, no uploading. I'm done. I move on. It's not stored on the device. It's here in the app. And now you can see my resident, and her photo is here on the screen. A couple other things for those that work at more than one home. The upside down triangle that is a bunch of lines at the top. This is going to allow me to filter by a home area that I can focus on or change my facility. This is all tied to your access. Your nurse user that you're using today to practice and get comfortable with PCC only has access to Heron Grove, simply because of functionality we're training on. So you wouldn't see anything other than Heron Grove in that dropdown. Okay. I also have 3 dots. These are shared devices. I have the ability to change my PIN. So if I forgot my PIN and I had inactivity, I'm going to use my password. Well, I can reset it once I get back in. Also, we want to log out. It's extremely important that we're logging out of these apps. Number one, it saves it from draining the battery faster because it's running in the background. And it also protects my user credentials from anyone else being able to access the system when you may feel that your account is compromised. So log out when you're done. So that's just a little bit about ChartPic when it comes to a home that you work in. Keep in mind, you might be using uploaded files for the time being due to the time crunch that we have to start using InterRAI LTC. Any questions on what I just shared with you?
Yeah, and there was a question in the chat from Amy. She's asking, for taking photos with a cell phone or tablet, can the photo be printed from PointClickCare?
Well, you can, I would say no. It can be printed on reports. I can include resident photos on reports, and that's the only way you're going to be printing it out. So if you wanted to share your screen, Jamie, I can show you. There's a couple cool features that actually just came out in the last week in the system. So now that we've got a resident photo uploaded to Michelle Miller, if Jamie refreshes her screen, top left corner, you'll now see that photo is here. If you were to go ahead and click on that photo, Jamie, it brings it up and it magnifies it. That's not a print option. But if you click anywhere outside of there, it collapses it. You'll notice here as well under the ellipsis, 3 dots. When we go to edit photo, there's no print option from here. It's import and close. I'm not sure if you clicked on the icon. We're not seeing your image, Jamie. And it could be because you shared an application instead of your full screen. There we go.
Yeah.
And it's
Jan, can I ask a question?
Sure can.
Yeah, so when somebody passes, we have a remembrance board, so we're going to print off a picture, an 8.5 by 11. Can I access that photo from there to copy and print?
You could probably take a screenshot of it. That's not going to get you what you need.
Right. Okay.
Because the only
I'll-
other way to get it out of here would be to have it print on a report. And again, that's going to be a piece of paper, right? That's not going to be, there's no
yeah,
print of just the photo.
yeah, I need a hard copy that's 8.5 by 11. So I'll have to look for another source for that photo. Thank you.
You're welcome. Great question. All right. So just as an FYI, the profile, if we go back to the profile tab, and you were to print this admission record. So this admission record covers a lot of information that we have entered into the system to support your InterRAI journey in the interim until we get the rest of PointClickCare up and running. But these are some of the reports where that data you're entering is feeding and giving you that transparency and the ability. So your resident photos here in the top left, you've got information, facility information and telephone number for the facility. All that demographic information, though we didn't enter it today, a lot of it's pulled here from the census, it's pulling here. You've got demographics, sex, birth date, age, marital status, religion, admitted from, this is coming from your census. You've got information here about the allergies you entered, and you've got information about prepaid funeral arrangements, and you can see the spouse's name, laundry done by. This is all information that's been chosen to show on your admission record, all of their contacts. Pharmacy will populate once we get to that stage. Default pharmacy, all of your external care homes that have been listed under external facilities on your profile, the contacts that have been listed on the profile tab of the chart, diagnosis that were entered and the date it was entered. You can see last vitals entered into the system. All of that information is here. Now, the miscellaneous information would be something that's filled out manually when it's been printed in the event you are leveraging this detail. So your transfer discharge report is very similar. What's the difference? For you at the moment, nothing, because we're not doing immunizations until phase 2. But it does include immunizations. It does include medication, a list of medications and the last administration date in a table format. So there is some features that are a little bit different, but again, much more than what we've got here, but all of this and more. So really just helping you if you don't have a report today that you send with the resident that you're using at a care org, and it's something manually you're doing, you can start to leverage these reports here for the interim transfer discharge especially. Okay. Any final questions before we conclude for today?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi there. So we have a couple questions here. Like we have our rec therapy aides and our rec coordinator here. Would they be charting, for example, because they also aspects of what they do are populated into RAI. Would they just be charting in the progress notes, or is there any particular like meaningful life activities, that kind of thing, that they would be charting in PointClickCare, separate from progress notes?
So correct me if I'm wrong, the leadership team can add to this, but for the time being, they will continue in care org until we get to that stage. Yes, eventually, once we expand the adoption and usage of PointClickCare, but for the time being, no.
Yeah, so for right now, we're going to run, this is specific to the minimum amount of data that we need for LTCF. So anything that was sort of extra or is already being taken care of by care organizer will not be included in PointClickCare just yet. So we're going to continue with everybody charting the majority in, everything in care organizer, and only putting in absolutely critical information in PCC as well. So in order to make sure that you guys aren't doing an extreme amount of double documentation, we're keeping as much as possible just in care organizer for the time being, especially things like progress notes and things like that, so that we do have that continuity of care. Like I said, HCAs are not using PCC at this time, so all of their documentation will be in Care Organizer until we roll out the full PCC.
Great questions, though. Great question.
Since Sam and Arm, we have a few questions, if we can ask.
Absolutely, you can. Go ahead.
First of all, just an administrative question. When you were scrolling the locations where a resident was coming from, I just glanced quickly and saw in Salmon Arm there were 2 hospitals listed, Shuswap Lake General Hospital, which is correct, and then one said Salmon Arm Hospital, and I can see this would create confusion, especially if we had agency using it or people that weren't as familiar with our city. Will we have some autonomy in terms of changing those defaults so that the choices aren't an error, or do we have to let you folks know to take out the name Salmon Arm Hospital? There was at least one that was not correct, just during your quick scroll there.
Jamie, did you want to take that question, or Rochelle?
That might be better for Rochelle.
I know the answer, but I think it's better coming from her.
So these were populated from Care Organizer entries. So it must have been entered by someone on the Care Organizer side, and we've imported all of those names into PointClickCare. So we will be remaining the go-tos if you need additional names entered, or if you need entries corrected. But Jan, we still need to talk about where we would go to make those corrections and add new entries.
Yes, and so that's making new entries and things like that is going to come with time. That's an organizational configuration, Rochelle. Okay. I would say if there's feedback you're receiving, we can have a quick one-off maybe on the status call that we have with the leadership team. We can show you quickly. Typically, organization config comes on the financial side. Keep in mind, admin side drives a lot of what we do clinically. They would be teaching you all of that.
Okay.
So we may have to circumvent that a little bit, but if there's feedback, I would encourage you to share that information, because even though someone enters a hospital for the question that came in, that's incorrect. What nurses are doing is entering a temporary census line, which is that ADT, which stands for admission, discharge, transfer. It is temporary. There will be somebody, admissions or unit clerk, that needs to manage that census, and they would need to be updating that. So as we are going to tighten up whether that information stays and gets selected correctly. So someone will be eyeballing what the nurse puts in and making changes as required. It's not permanent. So just as for the interim, until we can get all of the pieces of the puzzle together to support you. The goal is in the end that we would remove those features if they're definitely wrong. Mm-hmm. But I would say, Rochelle, and you can say yay or nay to this, but I would say get into that sandbox. And just like you saw quickly with that scroll, if you're seeing things in the sandbox that are really going to cause confusion or stress, let your leadership team know so that we can clean that up before we get to go live.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Any other questions from Sam and Arm?
You've talked about how sort of putting in some of this information ahead of time. So when do we start? Like, do we have access? When do we start getting access to this? Who's setting it all up? How's that all going to work?
So a lot of information has been imported as it pertains to your resident information. Rochelle, did you want to take that a little bit further?
Sure. So there's been some basic information imported, but basically starting June 5th, we will be going forward, starting fresh with this double documentation. So there's only certain fields in PointClickCare that have to be entered and maintained. The bulk of all of your documentation will still be done in Care Organizer.
Sorry,
and this is
Rochelle, I think you mean June 15th.
Did I say?
June
5th. June 15th. June 15th, sorry. Starting June 15th, this is where your unit clerks and your nursing staff will be admitting new residents, transferring, discharging, And then your nursing staff will be entering the weights and vital, in addition to entering it in Care Organizer. So there will be a short amount of time where there will be double documentation happening just for those key items. So it's a very small subset of data that you're going to be entering in both places, starting June 15th until we roll out phase 2, which is the remainder of all of the PointClickCare functionality. And then once phase 2 comes, that's when we will be turning off the switch, as you could say, for Care Organizer. So we would only be using PointClickCare as our EMR going forward from that date.
So what is it direct to?
So, yeah,
You had to say it.
so we don't get access till June 15th, is what you're saying, to add some of this information in, like weights and vital signs.
Correct.
They plan to
So
connect.
this weights thing, we will have to revisit, because Jan, did you say that you want the last 6 months of weights entered?
Yes.
Okay, and that's required for the LTCF.
It's really just going to stop the exceptions from generating and keep your database clean, and only have to manage those exceptions in PCC as they come. Otherwise, you see this alert spell that Jamie's sharing. These exceptions are going to continue to build with every entry. So if it takes 3 months, 6 months to get phase 2 rolled out, these exceptions are going to start building. And if no one is looking at them or managing them, because you're doing that through CareOrg, someone is going to have to do that cleanup.
So what happens when we're missing a weight or something like that?
So the system is looking at the current weight you're entering and looks back at every weight that you've entered. And if it was the prior weight that you entered that generates a 10%, you're going to get a 5, 7.5, and a 10%. It's not going to wait 6 months to give you that exception. It's going to give it to you right away. So that's why we wanted, because right now, so if the vital you're entering today, it looks back at the prior one. If it doesn't see an exception there for 5, 7.5, or 10, it's going to go to the next vital. At that point, it could be more than 30 days, so you won't get the 5, but you could get the 7.5 or 10. And it keeps going till it finds those exceptions, until it exceeds the duration for that particular exception. And so you can imagine if you enter a vital today and it can't find outside of the last vital entered anything for the prior 6 months that would say, hey, you don't have an exception here, it's going to generate it. Because it's looking at every value, looks at today's value and looks back at every value up to 6 months ago for that 10%.
And I will say that if you are getting, a flag because there's been a missed weight, I personally view that as beneficial. That's one more fail-safe we have that, something has not been entered, and maybe I should go and figure out what that's all about, because you would have to review those weights if there's a flag.
So what do we do about it? Like, how would we address that? Like,
so think about your policy. What do you do today to address a concern like that? I'm just giving you visibility into the fact that it's happening in the system. How do you handle that today? As a nurse, what do you do about it?
We do a current weight, but I can't go back to get a weight for last March, right?
So that historical values, that's why we're asking for those historical values. And so what I would say is leave it with your leadership. They will determine how they want to handle it. And it may be that we are going to be 3 months to 6 months before you get to phase 2 and be fully rolled out. And someone will be managing those exceptions to keep it cleaned up in the interim. So that's a discussion that can come back.
Do we know when that's going to happen, the second phase?
No.
So we're going to be done.
So I'll just let everyone know right now that everything that we're providing to you will be as up to date as possible. This is very much a work in progress. We're kind of pivoting left, right, and center. So don't worry, we're going to keep you apprised. It's just a matter of, unfortunately, we are, as usual, going through the motions in a very GSS style, and we all have to kind of get through this together. And I promise we're not hiding anything from you. But a lot of what we do for phase 2 and so on and so forth will be based on how it goes with phase 1. So A lot of that is going to come after we see how this all sort of pans out. We're going to learn a lot together, and we're going to need your feedback on what worked, what didn't work, what needs improvement, and that sort of thing going forward.
Are you going to go through how to log in as well? Or did I miss that?
So for those, we did go through that on the prior training session, and it may be that not everyone on this call would have been a part of that.
None of us were here. None of us were part of that here.
So I can go back through that for this call. That's not a problem. I just want to be very clear and transparent that your login process will change effective June 15th with single sign-on. So I will teach you how you can get into the sandbox for the time being with your PointClickCare credentials. Just know this is the generic user. Everyone is sharing that same generic user, and workflow change process management will come from your leadership as things evolve and testing and whatnot occurs. Okay. So Jamie, if you want to sign out as the nurse user, we'll log in, and then we will get to some of the other questions that are coming. So this login page, so this is for the sandbox now only. Please know that this will be bypassed with single sign-on. You will be getting network credentials if you don't have them already that you use to log into your computer with. When you log into your computer, there will be an icon on your desktop or a single sign-on page. Your team will, everybody does it a little bit different. And you'll click a button and it's going to take you right into PointClickCare. So you're not going to have to do this after June 15th or when single sign-on goes live. So for the time being, this is your login page. You can see your username. GS Train defines the organization as a whole, and the train defines the sandbox. In your live environment, it would reflect just GS, Good Sam. Okay? The information after the period, which is nurse in this case, that defines the individual as a unique user. Again, this will be your UPN, I believe it's referred to as your network credentials. So that will be the unique portion that defines you as an individual and stamps your credentials with every documentation. When Jamie clicks next, this is where the password would come in. So just like when you log into a computer, you have to enter your username on that computer, you're going to enter your password here. And for this password, it is welcome with a capital W, hashtag 12345.
Oops.
And how do you get to this screen where it says PointClickCare?
So your IT department, correct me if I'm wrong, Rochelle, are they going to push something out for the interim, or are they just going to expect that people are going to bookmark? Just so I know how to go forward with this.
So in the meeting invite for today, I included the login link and then the username and password that you can use to log into the training environment. Once we are going live, and it will probably happen a couple days before go live, it's going to be added on GSS Connect is what I've been told. So there will be a link right on GSS Connect.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I didn't see that extra information in your invite. So thank you, Rochelle, for clarifying that. So leverage your invite that she shared with you. The login page, the URL for this login page is in there. And it gave the username and the password.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So do you want to try the welcome hashtag?
Oh, did it not work? Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
I'm trying to multitask my way through. Yeah.
Perfectly understandable.
I should be paying more attention to this right here. There we go.
So once you log in, it takes you into the home page, which you can navigate. I always say hover to discover the clinical tab or menu, however you would prefer to leverage it. The biggest thing is hover. You don't want to click, because if I click the word clinical, it's going to take me to the resident list automatically. And maybe that's not where I want to land. You can then hover and bring your cursor down below the column headers. So Jamie and team have done a great job as they've been navigating different users. But what you really want to do when she hovers that clinical menu is make sure that mouse cursor goes down below the column headers, people, care management, quick entry. Because if we stay above there and run across the top, it's going to collapse and disappear every single time and you'll get frustrated. So just pulling it down below the column headers and then each item underneath. The main area you're going to leverage for the time being with phase 1 of your implementation is residents. Okay. And once you get to the resident list, you can navigate into that resident record by clicking on the name of the resident. Okay. Great questions. So Christensen Village had a question about information coming from the old system into the new system. There have been imports that have been done with, as Rochelle was explaining. So I think much of this question has been answered. You aren't doing it manually. They've done as much as they possibly can with information, pulling the data out of Care Organizer and having PointClickCare import that through specific templates, Excel templates. Okay, so that was one question in the chat. Some of you have added users through a private chat that went directly to me. So Mountain View, that was an example of who's in the chapel meeting room. If you can add it in the chat under everyone, if you haven't done that already, that way Dave will get that information. Otherwise, it's coming directly to me. Same with Penticton Village by the station, same scenario. And so VBTS, no, you will not be expected to use personal phones. So ChartPic will not be available until facility devices have been determined. So that's where I was going back to the fact that you have photos that were taken on a digital camera that would potentially be uploaded to a shared space. That's what I was saying in the interim for phase 1, you will most likely be using those files to get the photos uploaded to PointClickCare for your residents, because there has to be decisions made around facility devices. They'll be shared. Nobody is using their private phone. Okay.
Jan?
How long? Yes.
Sorry, just going to the questions in the chat. Kristen asked, going back to the medical providers list, is it possible to identify which specialty the physician is for? Example, neurologist, GI, etc.
Absolutely, you can. Yes. And so this would come into more of a leadership role. The team here wouldn't necessarily have access to this, but when it comes to if you hovered the admin feature, was an option called medical professionals. And when we go in there, there is an option for medical professional types. Jamie or Rochelle, if we need to get into that detail, we can definitely, do something during a status call to cover that to make sure you have the tools you need to move forward. But yes, we can.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So someone asked how long until the rollout will be completed for the BC homes. As Jamie mentioned, I'm just going to reiterate that it will be dependent on the success of phase 1. And so phase 2, as you can see, there are a lot of tabs in this chart and even pieces of this admission workflow that we did not go through. That will be all coming with phase 2 outside of the RAI tab. So more to come, but there is a lot of work that is going on behind the scenes to ensure success of that rollout as it comes. So lots of pieces before training gets here. And how short of a time for double documentation? I don't know that they can give you a specific date at the moment. Phase 2 has to come and all the pieces ahead. So there's a lot of series of calls that have to occur to understand workflows, tools, everything that has to go into the database to allow you to document on the front end. Right, so I think they'll give you the information, as they mentioned, as soon as it's available to them. They're moving and pivoting as we go to really do their best to meet all the requirements on their shoulders as well as yours.
And we do hope that we're going to keep it as short as possible. We know that that is additional workload for you guys, and certainly we don't want to be adding extra pressure. This is just simply what we had to do to meet requirements with the province and with the way that the whole landscape of healthcare is moving in Canada. And unfortunately, BC is rushing along, so we're catching up.
This is more of a question for Jamie and Rochelle. If staff, when they start having to enter into update both CareOrg and PointClickCare, if they see an error, like whether it's a spelling error in a name or the healthcare number or something's just not quite right, who do they let know?
You can reach out to health information. So we have our health information at gss.org email address, or you can give us a call at 780-431-3800. If you notice any inaccuracies, please let us know. Thank you, Donna.
That's a good question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just scrolling through the chat. I'm not seeing anyone.
Oh, there was one question from Donna. Can we play in the sandbox, and are all tabs available to play with, example reports? And the answer to that is yes, absolutely. Please play in the sandbox. As mentioned before, the instructions to access the sandbox is in the meeting invite with the username and password that you all can use to play around it here. You can't break anything. For reports, depending on if there's data or not entered, maybe not all the reports will work properly. Jan, can you speak more to that? But
you are 100% accurate. Reports will only allow you to get out what data goes in. Mm-hmm. So the resident-specific reports that I was calling out, sure, they will work. Print links beside data entered will work. Your major reports are only going to work because they're run by usually more than one resident in many cases. They'll only work if you're entering data. The one ask I have, because we have another session, until we're finished phase 1 training, please do not play in Michelle Miller's chart. This will be reserved for the driver of the next session because I'm going to be setting up examples tied to her, and I need to make sure that those examples are visible to you when we get to that training session. So you can use any other resident. You can go to the new tab, admit residents that are sitting there. You can use existing current residents. Maybe you change that resident's name to your own name. So that's a way for you all to identify, this is my resident, this is who I'm playing in, or name it a famous character or something like that. You can't hurt anything, as Rochelle said in here. Just I ask that you please leave Michelle Miller so that she can be intact for training. Donna, that's funny. Yes, it is a challenge. If I will say, if it can be broken, nurses will find a way to break it.
That's accurate. I just wanted to say, because I saw a couple questions, like you guys, I know you guys feel a little bit in the dark about how it's all coming fast and furious, and it seems without warning, not a lot of information on how it's all coming out. You're learning kind of as we're learning. It's an interesting rollout, and what I want to reassure you guys is that you're not going to do it wrong. We're going to be there to support you and get you through this. And yes, it is asking a bit more from you. And I know that's always unfair to ask nurses for more than you're already doing. It is a time of change. So we do have to learn and adapt to a new system. And that also requires extra energy. So none of that is lost on us. And we are going to keep you as informed as we possibly can, and give you all the help that we possibly can, including any resources. Jan has some resources that, as they are sort of available, we're going to get into it more when we get into the live site. So for now, it's all about kind of learning, sitting back, let it absorb. You're not going to absorb everything right off the bat. So just be aware that we're not showing you this once and taking it away. We're going to keep this all available to you so that you can reflect on things. And when you get on the floor, it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to stumble the first way through it. It'll be fine. We'll get you there.
So in the follow-up email, so for everyone that I have access to on the invite, I will be sending a follow-up email that can be forwarded on. I have a revised training guide out of what was included. The invite included a full training guide for the interdisciplinary admission, which you, if you opened it, clicked on it, we encourage you to bookmark it on the browser of your choice that you're using in-house, because it will be the most up-to-date version. It's actually in a SharePoint site in a customer-facing space. So if you bookmark it and open it from your browser each time, if we had to make changes based on updates that product releases, like this whole header is a brand new view today, just went out last week. And so as we're making changes, if there's changes that have to happen to that guide and you've bookmarked it, each time you click on it, you'll always have the most up-to-date version based on PointClickCare's current functionality and the visibility in the system. I'll attach a revised guide of the content we covered today in the session. It'll be an attachment. It's just a PDF, so it's a static guide, but you can take that guide. It's a high-level overview of all the areas we covered. And so you can definitely use that as your guide when you get into the sandbox and walk through those tabs. Like we said, you can't hurt anything in here. So if you have access to a tab, click on the tab, click the new button, add something to the chart. This is how you're really going to get comfortable with using the system. One of the questions that was in the chat was, can nurses access training sessions from home? Those recorded sessions, Dave is putting them into a shared space. Your leadership team will be able to share out where those recordings of each session are, and so you can watch them.
And yes, they should be available. Once they're up, you should be able to access them at home, no problem. Donna, I see your comment there, and that's a great comment. And as we go, again, we're all rushing through this together, but certainly that would be something that we would love to have available for you. Not sure we'll be able to get it in there, but we'll definitely, it's a great idea.
So something that's a little bit advanced, and it may be something that works for you, but some written documentation resources that Jamie was talking about, and or Rochelle, much of it will come from live. It's control, holding control down, and then F1, or shift and F1. Each computer works a little bit different. And you can see that Jamie had much more success with that control and then F1. Jamie?
Yep.
So control and F1. So this is the PointClickCare help files. This is just a fast way to get there. It opens up in a new tab. You'll notice on the left-hand side is a table of contents. Right now, Jamie has that all expanded, the clinical module. Everything that's under the clinical module is here. And she just collapsed it, so now we've hidden it. But just know clinical is in the middle. So when you think about the interdisciplinary admission workflow that we went through today, we covered allergies. We covered weights and vitals, which will be down a little bit farther. We covered diagnosis, which is medical. So in the middle here, if you scroll in the middle, you see the, see the medical diagnosis in the center? You must have shared differently because I can't annotate anymore. It disappeared. So medical diagnosis, you're not going to be looking for setup content, but if you click on medical diagnosis there in the center of your screen, you will be, no, it's right in the middle in blue, Jamie.
Oh, you wanted that one?
Yeah, just medical diagnosis entry. So if you need a quick reference as to, oh, I forget what she said about medical diagnosis, instead of watching the whole recording, you can click on the word medical diagnosis, and it's going to give you a high level and walk you through the steps to do a new diagnosis entry, second one down. Setup always refers to the back end.
Okay.
Okay. And so you can see documenting, ranking, and classifying. Notifications don't apply to us with InterRAI LTCF anymore. Or managing, so reports and dashboards. What did we learn today? How to document and rank and classify. So those are the two pieces that you would click into. Documenting is going to give you steps on how to get to the diagnosis tab. Steps under, it says clinical, resident, diagnosis, and then it's clicking new. So all of the steps are there, and it gives you each of the highlighted fields within the diagnosis window. So nice part is I can leave this open and go back to the tab that says resident dashboard, and I can complete the documentation entry. So yeah, you just close the files, and you could have just gone back to the resident dashboard and left that tab open, just as an FYI.
I just couldn't because of the sharing.
It's fine.
Header. Yeah.
Yep. So then you can come back and go to the diagnosis MedDiag tab and be able to do the entry there. So there are resources that are available in the sandbox as a way to get to them, to be able to give you written text. There is no videos in the sandbox that you can watch outside of the recording that Dave is doing for this session. So again, I just highlighted some of the areas. If you're curious, you can't hurt anything in here. Click on the line item and learn a little bit. Okay. All right. I think we've gotten through all of the questions that were in the chat, and even the ones that came to me directly that weren't visible to everyone, whether it was myself or Jamie or Rochelle that answered the questions. But I will say thank you all for joining and participating with your questions. It's greatly appreciated. Again, your email to your information team with feedback, questions, they're more than happy to support you in this journey as we go forward. So I wish you all a fabulous rest of your afternoon and evening. And I will see, I would believe most of you, if not all of you, on Thursday afternoon. Well, it's morning for you, 10 to 12, to go through documentation in PointClickCare for InterRAI LTCF.